Welcome to this Product Focus webinar. It's part of a series of webinars aimed at providing insights, best practice, tools, and ideas you can use to help improve product management and product marketing in your business. My name is Ian Lunn. I'm one of the founding directors of Product Focus. I've got over 25 years experience in product management, and I've worked in companies of all shapes and sizes. And I'm joined by my fellow director, Andrew Dickinson.
Hi, I'm Andrew. I've been working in product management and product marketing almost as long as Ian, perhaps even longer. So who are we? Well, we're Europe's leading product management and product marketing training business with a focus on technology-based products. We've worked with a range of companies from startups to mid-sized and multinationals from around the world.
Today, we're joined by Marty Cagan. We're going to be talking about product leadership. So that is Product Focus. Now I'm going to pass over, if I may, to you, Marty, to take it from there.
All right. Thank you very much, Ian. And thanks for inviting me. And thanks, everybody, for connecting for this. So, I was hoping to talk this session about product leadership. Now, the truth is, my favorite topic it's not really product leadership. My favorite topic is how product teams actually solve hard problems. That's the core of, pick a great product. That's where it comes from. And the first book I wrote was Inspired, which is really all about the techniques for how product teams do that. How do you solve hard problems in ways that customers love, but work for the business? But as much as I love doing that and talking about it, one of the things I've really learned is that in many companies, and by the way, if you don't mind me saying, especially in Europe, they're not allowed to work that way. And this kills me because I'm all about closing that gap between how the best companies work and how the rest work. And the rest are not very good compared to the best companies. Now, some of the best companies are in Europe, and I'll point those out, but they're really they're not evenly distributed. And there's a lot of things that factor into that. But I do believe that the root of the issue is leadership. And so for the last few years, my focus has been on leadership. What does the leadership need to do so that their teams are able to do good work? And that's what I'm going to focus on in this talk. And for those that don't know, I wrote another book recently, along with my one of my partners, Chris Jones, called Empowered, which is aimed at the leaders. And that's what I'm really doing here, is trying to summarize sort of the 100,000-foot level view of product leadership. The book itself is more than 400 pages. So these are big topics, but I would encourage you I'm hoping to convince you, motivate you to read it. And more importantly, practice it. Do it, apply it to your company. If you want to start working like the best companies, it's different. It is fundamentally different. I think you'll start to get a sense of those differences very quickly here. But for those that don't know where I'm coming from and my biases, I started as an engineer. So the first 10 years of my career was writing software. It was doing it for HP Labs, which was a great place to learn the craft of software engineering. And they had a great culture for that. They had a great leadership program for that, an engineering management training program, which I went through, called the HP Way. And, one of the things I realized later, how lucky I was, but for the entire 10 years I was there, every single day I had at least one manager that was there to help me get better at my job. And I thought that was normal. I thought everybody did that. Sometimes I had two, like when I wanted to learn design techniques, when I wanted to learn product management practices, I had more than one, but I always had at least one person who was helping me to develop the skills that I needed. Now, I meet so many people today that have never had that, ever. And this is to me really a criminal, and we need to fix this. This is one of the big differences, again, between the best and the rest. So anyway, I was very lucky because, and I should mention, in my whole career, almost all of it was doing products for developers, for other teams. I've always loved doing things for teams. The only difference is I'm not providing technology to product teams today. I'm providing more advice and best practices to those teams. The one exception to that was actually eBay, where it was, as you know, a marketplace. It was a great experience. I was the original head of product and design there. And before that at Netscape, I was the head of platform and tools. So these are great companies, great experiences. And really SVPG, this just started with a few friends of mine. We are all senior leaders at successful product companies, and we wanted to share the practices, mostly because we would see so many companies out there that were still behaving as if we're in the 1980s. And so, yeah, I want to fix that. I want to do what I can to sort of fix that. And that's what this talk is about. Okay, so this talk is really all about empowered product teams and how do we provide the environment for empowered product teams to work. Now, we need to talk about what that really means. An empowered product teams exist to serve customers in ways that meet the needs of the businesses, of our business. Now, it's worth pausing for a second because that is very different than what most teams in most companies are set up to do, because most teams in most companies are set up not to serve customers. They're actually set up to serve stakeholders. And that's not an exaggeration. They are often told, your customer is your stakeholder. You are there to serve the needs of the business. And those stakeholders will get together. They usually come up with roadmaps that they want for the quarter or the year, and they'll ask you to crank out as many of those as you can. So that is a fundamental difference. Now, I'm not suggesting we ever ignore the needs of the business. Like I said, a great product, customers love it, but it also meets the needs of the business. So we have to collaborate with the business, but that is a big difference. I hope nobody misses that. In a typical organization that's not very good, they run what we call feature teams or project teams or delivery teams. They are just like I said, they're there to serve the business, and they can't be held accountable to the results. They're just there to code basically and ship features. So this is a big difference, and so much stems from that difference. Now, instead of being given a roadmap of features to build, empowered product teams are given customer or business problems to solve. And then most importantly, what it means to be empowered is that they are able to both discover and deliver a solution to those problems. Now, again, in a feature team or project team company, they're there to deliver somebody else's solution. That's what comes on the roadmap. In an empowered team, they're given a problem, and so they have to figure out the solution. That's what discovery is. Figure out a solution worth building. What that really means is valuable, usable, feasible, and viable, and then build it and ship it. And one of the big differences between feature teams and product teams is, you can't hold a feature team accountable to results because they are not asked. They don't come up with those features. They are just implementing them. The solutions are coming on the form of a roadmap from some executive. On the other hand, in an empowered product team, they come up with the solutions, so then they can be held accountable to the results. And that's a big difference. It's also, by the way, the number one reason why it's a lot harder to work on a real empowered product team than it is to work on a feature team. It's harder, but most people will tell you it is much more satisfying. It is actually why most of us train to be product designer engineers. All right. Now let's talk a little bit about leadership, because one of the things that's true, and honestly, this is true with agile organizations, let alone empowered organizations, but you don't need less leadership, you need better leadership. Now, when I first meet a company that that's working in feature teams or project teams, if I first meet a company and I talk to the leaders in product, just to be clear, when I say leaders in product, I mean the managers and leaders of product management, product design, and engineering. But when I meet those leaders in product, and I tell them what they're actually responsible for once they transform into a serious product company. First of all, most of them will say, oh man, we're not doing any of that. So, okay, big difference in terms of what their responsibilities are. And the second thing they usually say is, and that's hard. They realize just how hard it is to be a strong product leader. Realize in a feature team organization, the leaders are more facilitators. They're more like making sure we have the staff that can build the features that the stakeholders are asking for, make sure the trains run on time. That's basically what the leaders are doing. But in an empowered organization, this is a much harder job. And that's what I'm about to share with you here, what the responsibilities really are for these leaders. Now, for those that don't know Andy Grove, but Andy, he was died a few years ago, but he was one of the legends in our industry. He was the CEO for many years of Intel, and he was actually the guy that came up with OKRs. Now, he would turn over in his grave if he saw how most companies are using OKRs. Okay, and it is really Google's fault, but many companies thought it'd be easy to apply OKRs and they got nothing out of it other than a big waste of time because they're feature team companies and OKRs are not designed for feature team companies or project team companies. They're designed for empowered product team companies. And he built his company on that model. OKRs were just a way to manage and assign work. So anyway, this is a great quote, I find, because it really gets to the heart of it. In a good company, what gets in the way of good work? There's really only two possibilities. The first is that people don't know how to do good work. And the second is they do know how, but they don't really care. Those are the two things we're going to talk about. That's really the difference between management and leadership. The first is management. The second is leadership. And most of us as leaders in product organizations are responsible for both management and leadership. So let's talk about those in order. Let's start with management, which is really two things: coaching and staffing. And this is one of those things that's a little different depending on what level you are in the organization. But if you are a first level manager, so your direct reports are individual contributors, either product managers, designers, or engineers, then to set your expectations, roughly 80% of your time should be spent coaching and basically on managing. The other 20% of your time would be spent on the leadership activities that we're going to talk about. I refer to those as the strategic context. Now, if as you rise in an organization, you become from manager to a director to a vice president to, say, a chief technology officer or a chief product officer, that flips. So if you go to the top of the organization, like a chief technology officer, chief product officer, they are spending about 20% of their time coaching and about 80% of their time on the leadership activities. So that's going to vary depending on your level in the organization. But both of these, leadership management, are always important. All right, so let's talk about what we mean by coaching. For those who don't know Bill Campbell, he's a legend. He's known as the coach of Silicon Valley. He also passed away a couple of years ago. But he was literally the guy that coached Steve Jobs at Apple. He coached Bezos at Amazon, and he coached Larry and Sergey at Google for the first decade of those three companies, which is pretty amazing. He did not coach me personally. I met him several times, but he coached three of the people that I've worked for in my career. So I grew up hearing his lessons. And because of that, I really think he made a very profound impact on the industry, because even though it's true that Apple and Google and Amazon, those three companies, have very different cultures, this is true in all of them. They all provide a strong leadership coaching culture where they know that their job is to provide the right environment for people to do good work. They all have empowered product teams at the core. None of them work like a big bank or anything like that. I love this quote: coaching is no longer a specialty. You cannot be a good manager without being a good coach. I cannot tell you how often I have to say that and explain that to leaders in product organizations. They do not understand what their job really is. But if your goal is to empower, if your goal is to create a scalable solution where you have 100 product teams that can all do great work, then coaching is your primary activity. That is how you do that. There's no way it scales for you to do what's called command and control at that scale. That's the alternative to empowerment. I'll talk more about that. So what does that really mean? Doing coaching plans for every single person. Now, just to be clear, a coaching plan is not at all a performance improvement plan. That is a HR thing that we do when somebody is probably going to get fired because they're not able to do the job. That's a totally different thing. A coaching plan is there to help your people reach their potential. I was trained as an engineering manager. I was trained that I am judged by how many people I can get promoted. And, at most places, including where I was, I can't as a manager just declare somebody promoted. I have to convince my peers, the other managers, that this person deserves a promotion. So my job as a manager is to prepare the people for promotions. And we need more experienced people desperately in every company, especially rapidly growing companies. So active coaching is right at the essential. That's doing an assessment, that's doing a coaching plan, and that's doing one-on-one coaching at least every week. If you're not doing that, if you worked for me, you wouldn't be working for me for long. So this is your job. Okay. You're coaching knowledge, you're coaching skills, and you're coaching the context, which I will talk about in a minute. Some of you may actually have met Christian Idiotti. He's now an SVPG partner. I've known him for more than 10 years. He's been an amazing product leader at several companies. And if you talk to anybody who's worked for him, they will tell you that what distinguishes him is he is a world-class coach. He is literally, anybody who's worked for him adored working for him, learned so much from him. And he's sort of a machine. He goes to a company, he sets up an onboarding program, he sets up a serious staffing program, he sets up coaching, and pretty soon that company has got many awesome product people. And that's what you need. I love this quote of his: every problem is a people problem. It really is. Where we are, the business we're in, and this applies to engineering, design, product, business we're in. Yeah, people are right at the center of this. So, okay. Second responsibility for management is staffing. And of course, staffing and coaching are very related. The better you do on staffing, the easier it is on coaching. But this is another one of those areas that is dramatically different between great companies and the rest. This quote from Bezos, which he just reiterated, by the way, is really a pretty significant statement. He's saying that the biggest single reason for their success is how seriously they take staffing. And that's a pretty big statement because they have had a lot of reasons for their success. From my point of view, the biggest reason for their success is their genuine customer focus. But there's no question they're very serious about scaling with quality people. And, this is a myth. A lot of people think, well, Amazon hires people that are they're just like from another planet than what you are able to hire. It's really not true. I know so many people that were working at their current company and not very happy, not doing anything impressive. And then they switched to working for Amazon. And now all of a sudden they're doing amazing products. The people don't change. What's going on is the company they're in knows how to take advantage of what's between their ears. So that's what staffing and coaching is really all about. So how you recruit, you interview, you hire, you onboard, you promote. This is important. All right, that's the management part of the role. And then the leadership part of the role is referred to as the strategic context. One of my favorite product companies, Netflix. Awesome company, continues to reinvent themselves, continues to show amazing levels of innovation. And, their mantra, Netflix is an example of a company that sets empowerment all the way, the dial all the way to 10. They go all in. If you haven't read it, there's a new book out by Reed Hastings, a co-founder of Netflix, called No Rules Rules. And it talks about their culture. It will strike many of you as, wow, that's a very unusual culture. And it is. So, for example, they don't have a vacation policy. They don't have an expense reporting policy. They're just like, don't be an idiot. Do what makes sense. If you're not smart enough to manage expenses reasonably, you probably shouldn't even work here. That's their philosophy. Now, I don't think you need to go that extreme, but I do think I love their message. One of the mantras they have, there's essentially two ways of working: command and control, the old way, and empowerment. Their model is empowerment. And the way you do that, if you want to push decisions down to the team, you have to provide the team with the context. Otherwise, how are they going to know the decision? Yeah, sure, they can say algorithm A is better than algorithm B, but can they say that this solution is better for our business than this solution, or this is better for our customers than this? They can't do that without having the strategic context. They need to know the product vision. They need to know the strategy. They need to know the principles. They need to know how we monetize. They need to know what the business priorities are. So it's all about pushing this context down to the teams. But that is very much the model I'm talking about. Leslie Kilgore is one of their original employees who's still on their board. But she coined the phrase "lead with context, not control." I will say they also use a variation of this, and I'm saying this because I've had to share this with so many European teams, especially Northern European teams. But the idea is that lead with context, not process. Those are essentially the same thing, but they sometimes need to emphasize process, because process is one way to scale. If you look at processes like SAFe, Scaled Agile Framework, that is an example of the opposite of everything I'm talking about. I do not know a single good product company that uses SAFe or its cousin less. Normally I could care less which process you really use. This is really up to the engineers on how they want to develop, but that is not that kind of process. That's the kind of process that dictates how the whole company is going to operate. And I do not know how you could do any good work, how you to do any kind of innovation in a process like that. But that's a process that's all about leading with process controls, very top down, as opposed to the opposite, what we're talking about here. Okay. So what do we mean by strategic context? That's the below the line are product teams, and product teams are given problems to solve. That's what objectives are. And then they discover and deliver those solutions. But in order to make the choices they need to make, in order to be empowered, in order to make decisions, they need strategic context, which starts with the mission and objectives for the company, the KPIs that you use to determine the health of the company, but quickly gets into the product vision, principles, the team topology, the strategy. I'm going to describe those next. And that's what we mean by product leadership. The leaders of product management, product design, and engineering need to provide this context. All right, let's start with product vision. First thing I'd say is there's a lot of people that are completely confused about product vision. I should qualify everything I'm saying here, and really this entire talk. It does not apply if you're a feature team company or a project team company, or even worse, a delivery team company like SAFe is delivery teams. It only applies to a product company. So for example, there is no point to a product vision if you're just there to serve the different business units. So the first thing to know is, we're talking about empowered product teams. If you're trying to create this kind of company, if you want to start working like Amazon or Google or Shopify or Spotify or Stripe or Slack, If you want to start working like a great company, then now you need to pay attention. All right. So product vision, first of all, it is not, if you think it can fit on a canvas, it's not a product vision. If you think every product team or squad should do it, it's not a product vision. You're missing what this is all about. Product visions, first and foremost, it's all about putting the customer front and center. We have many other techniques that put our business front and center, like our business objectives. But the product vision is all about how are you going to make your customers' lives better. If you don't have that, it's not a product vision like a good company talks about. Second, the point is, if product vision isn't a big deal if you're a little startup and you've got one or two teams, everybody knows what you're doing. But if you are, if you have, let's say, 20 product squads or teams, or 50, or even 100. This morning I was on a call that has more than 200 product teams. It's a huge company. You desperately need a vision, because the point of the vision is where we're all trying to go. We want to make sure we're all going in the same direction and not in different directions. So it's often referred to as the North Star, meaning no matter where you are, you can look in the sky, find that North Star, and get into the same direction. So it's critical that you have one product vision that describes the future you are trying to create. The truth is, this is our single best recruiting tool. Good product engineers, designers, product managers want to work on something meaningful. And the way they learn that is from the product vision. So it should inspire. This is the main artifact that leaders do that is meant to be emotional. That's why so many companies invest time and effort to make a video, to add a soundtrack, to really make it compelling, the product vision. But fundamentally, they're usually prototypes one way or another of what you're trying to do. All right. You want to make some choices about the industry trends that you are trying to support. You want to make sure you're reflecting the company values. You want to make it, like I said, it's a great recruiting tool. It's also true that the product vision drives the architecture, and it also drives the team topology. Team topology, we're going to talk about next. All right. But I love this quote about vision if you've never seen it, because it very much captures what I think we're trying to do. For example, the command and control way would be, if you want to build a ship, to make a Microsoft project plan and say, oh, I want you to do this and you to do that. And here's the plan. It'll be done here. On the other hand, the empowered way is show people why having a ship would be awesome and let them figure out the best way to do that. So that's what we're looking for. Now, team topology is how do we set up the product teams so that every team, first of all, we want to maximize or optimize for empowerment. So how do we structure our teams? When we talk about team topology, this refers to how are we carving up our code base so that each team has clear ownership and responsibility of something meaningful. They're not stepping on each other's toes. This is the opposite of feature teams. It's the opposite of project teams where everybody's just working on whatever. In a real product company, they own something. So if you go into the YouTube organization and you want to talk about recommended videos, there is a team that owns that. That is them. They've got clear objectives. They are constantly working to get better. All right, that's what we're looking for. Sense of ownership, autonomy. Now, autonomy is not the same as empowerment. This is important to understand. A lot of people get confused on this. Empowerment means the team is able to figure out the best way to solve the problems they've been assigned. That's what empowerment is. Autonomy is related to that, but different. Autonomy means, and we have everything in our team that we need to build that solution. Now, the truth is, even in the best companies like Netflix, like all these companies I'm mentioning, they have empowerment, but nobody has full autonomy. Full autonomy I've only seen happen when they're very, very small, because everybody has dependencies. That's why, for example, in most good companies, like half the organization is in platform teams, common services teams. And those are by definition dependencies, but they are dependencies that help us overall. So those would be considered good dependencies. And yes, every one of those platform teams, every one of those dependencies reduces autonomy, but it increases empowerment. So that's why it's so important. And then alignment, of course, where we want to make sure we're all headed in the same direction. This same mantra really at Amazon, but highly aligned teams, but loosely coupled. Loosely coupled is referring to the dependencies. So that's what we're looking for with a team topology. Now, team topology is a hard topic. It's one of the major sections in the new book, but it's a hard topic because there are lots of nuances to a good topology. What I can tell you is there's no one good or best topology because it just depends on what you're optimizing for in your organization. But I can tell you there are lots of bad topologies, and you can tell a topology is bad when, for example, you talk to a team and they complain they can't do anything without lots of dependencies on other teams. And just a simple feature, they're like, oh, it turns into a major endeavor here, and I've got to coordinate with 5 other teams. And it's like, we can't do anything without a lot of pain. That's a sign of a poor topology. Now, the other thing I'd say is coming up with a good topology requires both the leaders of product management and the leaders of engineering to do that together. You can't have it for one and not the other. You certainly can't have 2 separate ones. It's got to be together. All right. What I think is one of the most important parts of the strategic context is product strategy. This is another one of those grossly misunderstood things out there. There's so many people will spout off all these ridiculous things about strategy. You know, obviously, I'm not talking about business strategy or marketing, go-to-market strategy. I'm talking about product strategy. There's a lot of kinds of strategy out there. You can have a strategy for anything. But there is no, I mean, I've never seen one. I do not believe it exists, but there are no strategic management tools or matrices or fill in the blanks and you get a product strategy. That is not, I've never seen it work that way. The way it works is that some small number of really smart people get together and they make some choices about what's most important to focus on. They decide the insights that are going to power their investments. So those insights can come from the data. They can come from talking to customers. Those are our 2 favorite sources. They can come from the enabling technology. They can come from the industry at large. They can come from anywhere. And then we have to convert that strategy into action, which is our next topic. But I love this quote from Steve Jobs. People think focus means saying yes to what you've got to focus on, but it's really much harder than that. It means saying no to all the other great things you could do. And that's the part. People don't have trouble picking something important. They have trouble turning down other great opportunities. Again, it's easy to turn down bad opportunities, but you have to turn down good opportunities if you want to truly focus. All right. Now, the way we assign work, if you're going to work in an empowered company and you're not going to just give your team a roadmap of, a quarter to a year worth of features, instead, if you're going to empower them, this is how we do it. You may know the General George Patton quote, don't tell people how to do things, tell them what you want them to accomplish and let them surprise you with their ingenuity. So team objectives. Team objectives are really the main technique to do this is OKRs. Now, the truth is OKRs have been used so many ridiculous ways because, again, people don't have empowered organizations. They have feature teams. But the main thing I'd say is you'll do well with OKRs if you forget what you think you know about them and come at it with a fresh perspective. So first of all, Don't do cascading OKRs. That makes no sense in a tech product organization where the heads of design, product, and engineering just do objectives and pass them down to their people. That's ridiculous. It completely counteracts the whole purpose of a cross-functional product team. So that's nonsense. Second, don't do individual OKRs. That will just confuse the issue. The only kind of OKRs you want to do are product team OKRs. What do you want each product team to do? There should be 1 or 2 a quarter. And, this is a big topic, doing objectives well, especially because there's so much noise out there. And partly that noise is because so many people have never worked in a good product company, but partly the noise is because you can use OKRs for all kinds of organizations like sales and marketing and customer success and services. And the way you use it there is very different than how we use it in a product organization. So it's a kind of a mess. Most of the so-called experts, all I could advise you to do is be careful who you listen to. All right. Avid is one of my favorite product leaders. She's based in London. She sends it right here. A leader should articulate what needs to be done and why. The why is the strategic context, and then let the team decide how best to do it. Now, there are lots of reasons for empowering, of course. Many, many books have been written on this, but fundamentally, we believe that most of them will do better work when they're empowered, because who better to make these choices than the people working with the enabling technology every day and talking to customers every week? Who better? There's no way the executives can know all this and do all this. So that's one, but there's also just motivation. One of the famous quotes in our industry is, we need teams of missionaries, not teams of mercenaries. Mercenaries just build what they're told. That is not what you want. Bezos likes to phrase that as, we need people who think like owners, not think like employees. Now, I realize, especially when I talk to Northern Europeans, that can be a sensitive topic because this gets to culture and work-life balance and all that. But I'm just telling you that if you look at the successful product companies, they work very hard to make their people feel like owners. And the most common way they do that is they make them owners. And the way you do that is you give them stock. So I realize it's harder to do that in Europe than it is in the US. It is not an accident that it's easy to do in the US. I think it's part of the ingredients for the sort of innovation machine, which is sort of the Silicon Valley model. Now, stock options are not the only way to do that. You can do it with profit sharing programs. You can do it with great leadership, but you need to do it. If your people feel like employees, not like owners, then you've failed. And that's a big thing. And now you might disagree with that, but I'll defend it. And you have to decide. But I'll tell you that this is really important. All right. So let's try to put these things together, because it is a lot, but it's not rocket science. First of all, the product vision describes the future you're trying to create. The team topology defines how you structure your product teams to do good work. Product strategy is what helps us. First of all, it helps us deliver on the vision and meet the needs of the company, but specifically, it helps us decide which problems need to be solved. The team objectives are how we assign those problems to product teams. And then once you assign a problem to a product team, discovery is where they figure out a solution worth building, and delivery, which everybody knows, is how you build that solution, QA test it, and deploy it. So those are the 6 main concepts in a tech product organization. Like I said, it's not that hard. But if you look at it, in most companies, the only one of these that's really going on is delivery. In the bad companies, it's just delivery. And they're delivering what the stakeholders tell them. They're not doing any discovery. They're certainly, they're not doing objectives. They're doing roadmaps. They don't have a product strategy. They always have some team topology, but often it's transient project teams. And they don't have a meaningful product vision. So this is when I said at the beginning, most of the time when I explain this, the leaders say 2 things. Number one, we're not doing any of that. And number two, it's hard. It looks hard. Hopefully that makes sense to you now. All right. The last point I wanted to make, it's another Steve Jobs quote, but a lot of people think, literally product leaders, they think their job is to please the business. And I know product leaders who have been told that by somebody like a CIO. Your job is to make as many of our stakeholders happy as possible. And I'm like, well, that is not your job. That is the job in an IT organization. That is not the job in a tech product company. Steve Jobs understood that. He was like, if you want to make everybody happy, don't be a leader, sell ice cream. I think he's right on there. All right. So I know that several good questions have been coming in, and so I definitely want to have time to talk about those. I just wanted to, inspired is for product teams. And if you have never worked the way I just talked about with lots of prototypes and testing value, usability, feasibility, viability, that's why I wrote the book. I'd strongly encourage you to read it. It shares the main techniques I see teams using that are good teams. Empowered, on the other hand, is really what I just summarized. It's aimed at leaders and managers so that you can provide the organization that your teams need. All right. Ian, how are we doing?
How are you doing? Very well indeed. Thank you, Marty. That was wonderful. Really impassioned. I can see you really care about that, which is great. What I'm going to do is just do a quick recap on what we can offer in Product Focus and encourage people to start typing in questions in the question panel. We've already got some come in, but if you want to ask a question of Marty, now's the time to type it. At Product Focus, we do private on-site training and live online versions of that as well. We offer our certification course, we offer our leading product management course and reviews of product management. So please get in touch if you think we can help. And then just starting to look through some of the questions that have come in. There's one from Jan. Great talk, Marty. This must be tricky, Marty. I hope it's going to be not too tricky for you. What recommendations do you have for product leaders and enterprises with large and versatile, historically grown portfolios, which can lead to a very vague and retrofit company vision?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I would say, because there's always this, people believe that large enterprises can't do product well. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Have you seen Amazon? Have you seen Google? Have you seen Netflix? These are very large enterprises, probably a lot bigger than what you're even alluding to, yet they do product incredibly well. So that's just a myth. It is true that most enterprise software companies, B2B enterprise software, most of them are terrible at product. That's true. And I have lots of reasons I believe that's the case, but most of them are terrible. And what's really going on is they're just set up. They're often not run by a product person. They're run by a salesperson. It's very sales driven. They're just doing specials. They have none of the skills. Now, of course, there's a whole new breed of enterprise companies today that are awesome at product and are turning over the world. Look at Stripe. Look at Shopify. Look at Slack. These companies provide technologies for big businesses. Workiva, you may not have heard of them, but they've just taken over enterprises. There are so many great companies that are coming because they're like, yeah, that is not how you do product. And you know what they're really doing? They're applying consumer techniques to enterprises. So it may not have arrived at your company yet, but it's not because it's not possible. Now, the other thing I wanted to address in Jan's question is our vision should be as broad as possible to hopefully apply to the whole company. But sometimes the company's portfolio is too broad. Like let's pick Google, which is a very well-known company. There is no one product vision that applies to all of Google at all. It wouldn't make any sense. They are having trouble even coming up with one mission statement for Google. On the other hand, does it make sense to have a product vision for YouTube? Absolutely. Does it make sense to have one for Google Cloud? Absolutely. How about for their advertising products? Absolutely. Local products? Absolutely. So if you look at their business units, they correspond to a product vision. but nobody's suggesting that one would meet the needs of the whole, the whole corporation, and they don't need to. But don't take that to mean that every product team or 2 or 3 product teams should have their own vision. That will miss the point.
Thank you, Marty. Let's have a look at another question here. A question from Sophie. As a product team, we're all on board with being empowered and autonomous. It mostly works, but when it doesn't, it seems to me to be other teams, e.g. commercial, encroaching on our values and ways of working. How do you best get other teams on board with empowering product teams?
Yeah, Sophie, good question. There's a lot you can do on a team-by-team basis. But the truth is, sometimes there will be stakeholders that don't like losing this control. And so the most important thing I have learned, the prerequisite to really becoming a great product company, is the CEO. Now, the CEO doesn't actually need to do much. They don't have to be experts in this stuff, but they do need to provide what Sophie's getting at, which is air cover. They need to be able to go to those executives and say, I know this is difficult for you, but here's why this is important for the company. And unless that CEO is willing to do that, if the CEO just says, oh, yeah, I mean, technology is super important. I am designating a chief digital officer, and that person worries about it. I know that that's not likely to succeed at all. Because you know what? The chief digital officer is a peer to these people, not the manager of these people. So that is an example of the CEO not doing his or her job. So it really does require the CEO. It's one of the biggest things that's required. Since Sophie didn't exactly ask this, but it's so relevant. The next most important thing is the product managers. If your product managers are not able to do the job I'm talking about, it'll fail. Now, the most common example of that is the product manager is not a product manager at all. The product manager is just a product owner, literally just a product owner, which frankly in a product company has no place. Product owner is a role. It's not a job. It's usually a small part of the responsibilities of the product manager. And any company that has product managers and product owners, well, I know what's going on there. That is not what we're talking about. That is not a good company. It's usually a sign of one of these other issues I've described. So, and then there's the question is nobody's the real product manager in that model. The premise of this work, there's really, this is a big topic for sure, but any good product team really requires 3 competencies. It requires empowered engineers, it requires strong designers, and it requires a real product manager. Otherwise, there's no way they can make the decisions they need to make. And real product manager is nothing like an administrator of a backlog, which is the product owner.
Thanks, Marty. There's quite a few questions coming in, and I think we may struggle to get to them all, but there's a good one here from Sarah. You were quite scathing of SAFe as you were going through the presentation. She said, you mentioned you're not a fan of SAFe, but some things you discuss around empowering teams to decide how to solve problems, removing barriers, and aligning to a common vision are in line with the SAFe approach. Have you had specifically bad experiences with SAFe that we could learn from?
Oh my gosh, that's such a funny question because it's the exact opposite of reality, I'm afraid. In fact, I published an article a couple of years ago on why SAFe was so evil. I use that word, I'm not using it lightly. It is evil. There is nothing agile in SAFe. I know where they're coming from. They're making a ton of money, and I don't blame them, their business. They're going after people that miss waterfall. But it's funny because in that article, I invited anybody who has different experiences than what I had heard from companies to reach out to me and share good experiences. In over 2 years, I have had precisely 0 people tell me that, oh no, we like it. All I've heard is nonstop criticism. And several articles shared with me about how it's got the lowest NPS scores of any process out there, and how basically no good people are going to want to work in that process. All I would suggest to Sarah is she's fallen for the marketing BS because there's no truth to that.
Okay, thank you. Interesting question here from Morgan. What are good general traits in people to look for when staffing a good product team? So, what traits do you look for if you're wanting good product people, Marty?
Well, I mean, that's a big question because assuming you mean product managers, product designers, engineers, those are the three main competencies. Of course, there are many kinds of engineers. And of course, there are other people that help us like data analysts, data scientists, user researchers, product marketing. So yeah, there's a lot of skill sets out there. Um, Depending on the role, of course, we have very specific competencies that we're looking for. But if you're asking, if the question is really asking what kind of general principles, one of them I mentioned before, which is you're looking for people that really think like owners, not employees, or the way John Doerr likes to say it, you're looking for missionaries, not mercenaries. You're looking for people who really care about this, that really want to do something amazing for the people, the customers. And that's, that's something that you either have or you don't. Not everybody wants that. A lot of people just want a job that they can show up for, work a few hours, go home. We're all at home now, but they're just not looking for that. And all I can tell you is if you're staffing an empowered team, that's not what you want. It's not what you want. You want people that are passionate about it.
Question from me, Marty. I mean, is there a big difference you see in product management in Europe compared to what you see in the States? I mean, I know it's difficult because companies are international, but is there anything you've spotted?
I don't. Let me put it this way. There is very little difference between good product management in the US and good product management in Europe.
Okay.
And there's very little difference between bad product management in the US and bad in Europe. I would say, and I'm trying everything I can to try to fix this, look, even in pick your favorite city, San Francisco, Seattle, that's like more, even in those cities, there's a lot of bad product management. There's a lot of bad, honestly. But the percentage is better because there's more of a community, there's more experience with that. And also because there are more leaders, more CEOs, more founders that have seen what good looks like. And I have seen this in countries all over the world. I watched it most recently in Brazil, where initially they had none of what we're talking about. But then there was a company, the first one was called LocalWeb, and they did an amazing job. And the people from there went off to a whole other set of companies in Brazil. And now those companies are doing great and they're spinning off people. I've been able to watch it happen. It's happened in India. It definitely happened in a huge way in China. China's got a lot of the best teams in the world today. So it spreads like that. But the difference between strong product management and weak, that is the problem. And that exists in every city of the world, the difference. And I think our job is to stop propagating the bad practices. That's what I see going on is so many people if I go to a conference, there's maybe 10 speakers. One or two of them are like, awesome. A lot of the rest are like, I can't believe the organizers let these people get up and spout this nonsense in front of all these people. So, we need to do a better job of not institutionalizing the bad practices.
Okay. Maybe one or two, maybe two questions, but certainly one final one from Jamie. Given that the change needed for most organizations is so great, where do you suggest one starts? I feel for Jamie, actually. I'm listening to what you're saying, thinking, my goodness, this is hard. Where do you start?
It is hard. Well, there's an article I wrote with a partner of mine who specializes in the transformations, especially of big companies. If you search for the term SVPG, keys to transformation, it lists what we think are, the important things to get right. With the full acknowledgement that most fail. And they fail usually because they're not doing one of the 10 things we listed in that article. But they're not easy things. They start, number one, I'll tell you, because I mentioned it before, is the CEO has to be on board. And if the CEO is not on board, the chances are very low that you're going to do anything meaningful. What'll happen is, they'll have a chief digital officer and some consultant will come in and say, all you need to do is move to Agile. and they'll move to Agile and they'll go like, what was the point of that? We got very little out of that. Because Agile, I'm talking real Agile, not fake Agile here, but real Agile is a good thing that I always recommend. But all it addresses is a little piece of the problem. On the six big topics I had for product organizations, that was the number 6. Agile just helps you with the delivery. It doesn't help you with any of the other stuff. So it is a much bigger problem than that. But that article will give and also, the book, the Empowered book the whole last section is on how do you transform your business.
Thank you. One final question from Richard, I think very topical. Has your opinion on remote working changed at all over the past year, particularly given the situation many of us faced during lockdown while we're working from home? And, Agile was about co-located teams and all of that. And so has your opinion on remote working changed at all, Marty?
First of all, I do think there's been some real good. The thing that I liked, honestly, even before the pandemic, we had a problem in that the major cities of the world, San Francisco, Seattle, New York, London, Shanghai, the places that had large tech communities, they were already out of space. So we needed a way to hire remote people. And of course, the pandemic just made that instant. We were all hiring remote people. That is good. Unfortunately, what the pandemic also showed was that just how important co-location is to innovation. And even the biggest fans will tell you it's a lot harder. And now it's not impossible, but it is a lot harder. Pretty much the first half of my talk on coaching and staffing, that becomes a much bigger obligation and burden when your people are remote. And it's tough because the truth is delivery is not the problem. Agile processes like Scrum and Kanban work very well, actually, with distributed teams. In fact, I've met a few teams that are showing me with numbers that their delivery is better with remote than it is when everybody's in the office. What has suffered has not been delivery, it's been discovery. Because that is predicated on collaboration, which is predicated on trust. And so many people, in fact, you've probably met many of them that have been hired during the pandemic. They've never face-to-face met their colleagues, and they feel like outsiders. They feel like they're not trusted because they're not trusted. And so, and it's like, it's so hard. Nobody listens to me. They don't even want to hear. And it's like, I'm sort of an employee, but not really. And it's like, is this going to be my life? So this is not good. And I am fully expecting that once vaccinations make it out there and I don't think we're ever going to go back to the single headquarter model like was prevalent for so many years. Even Apple agreed to a remote campus finally, and they were like the last holdout. So I don't think we're ever going to go back. However, I do anticipate many remote offices all over the world, small satellite offices where teammates can get together 2 or 3 days a week. And, if they want to work together 5 days a week, great. If they don't, great. But they'll be more fluid. And especially when they're doing discovery work, they will do more face-to-face time. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for listening to our webinar. Don't forget, we have lots of free best practice resources that you can sign up for at our website. We run our public courses across the world and anyone can attend. We also review product management and companies and run private training courses just for them. Good luck with your product management.